I'd like to say a big thank you to the Kenyan Ministry of Energy and Petroleum for their guidance. It's been amazing. The utilities for their support, and our esteemed speakers for parting their knowledge and expertise. Our gratitude goes also to the conference sponsors listed in the show guide. I'm pleased that EAPIC this year is underpinned by Chairman Dr. Albert Batari. As a former Minister of State for Infrastructure in the Republic of Rwanda, he has over 20 years of energy, water, and communication experience in Africa.
East Africa, currently I'm talking about East African community, with a population of around 130 million people, had been characterized by high poverty levels. The majority of the people still, to a large extent, depend on land and animal husbandry, often at subsistence levels. Their energy is derived mainly from traditional biomass consisting of fuel, charcoal, and agricultural waste, which contribute to more than 70% of the region's energy mix. Household cooking and heating constitute the largest energy demand. Modern energy sources, such as electricity or liquefied petroleum, LPG, are available only to a few urban centers and economic structures, with the majority of the poor excluded and left to dwell on whatever available biomass around them, and often in its raw form. Currently, less than 30% of East African population is connected to the grid. Average figure for Rwanda is slightly less than 25. It's about 23 something. Burundi is around less than 10%. Tanzania is slightly less than 30%. Uganda is less than 20%. And our giant host, Kenya, which is doing very well, it's slightly more than 40%. So that means 60% are still not connected. So that is the situation we're talking about in the region here. East Africa economies are largely driven by agriculture and small enterprises, characterized by infrequent use of motive energy and consequently low levels of energy consumption. This makes it less attractive for private enterprises to offer services in this sector. Access to modern energy services such as electricity or motive power, coupled with private sector development and improved financing schemes for the poor, could trigger an increased productive use of energy to generate additional income and begin lifting millions of people out of poverty. Ladies, gentlemen, that is where we are coming from. However, today, the landscape is changing rapidly, and EAPIC is one of the advocates for this positive transformation. But what is EAPIC? The ambition of East Africa Power Industry Convention is to be a strategic hub for key power stakeholders, looking at collaborative and joint solutions to the region's biggest challenges. Attracting over 1,300 attendees, the benefits of business attending such an event like EAPIC are significant. Drawing in investors, manufacturers, project managers, and energy specialists from East Africa and entire Africa and internationally, it will be the hub for knowledge sharing and business development. The exhibition floor out here will be the place for learning about the latest technologies and processes that can save companies time and money. Program this year, there will be a spotlight on the region's major power projects, for example, development of regional interconnected transmission network, site visits to the Olkaria geothermal field in Kenya, the last mile project in Kenya, excitation system for HPP Kamburu in Kenya, Somanga 250 megawatt CCGT power plant in Tanzania, Mtwara and Songo to Dar es Salaam gas pipeline project in Tanzania, Lake Turkana wind power in Kenya, 100 megawatt gas to power in Rwanda, 600 megawatt Karuma hydropower in Uganda, etc. It's amazing what is happening in the region today. We've listened to what the industry wants and need, and finance and investment features highly. To galvanize the project implementation in reality, EAPIC will attract regional and international financiers. There are 22 financial institutions who have registered to attend, and just yesterday was there a masterclass giving professional advice to fully understanding and mitigate key risks of doing business. We recommend that we all use EAPIC to understand what the key financial institutions are looking for in a sound project, and for financiers to seek out the entrepreneurs and innovators who can support the region's power map. The achievements to date include, but not limited to, over the past 17 years of EAPIC, engineers have been trained, deals have been done, technology showcased, and best practice recognized and communicated and adopted. Ladies and gentlemen, this year's theme is driving the regional power roadmap of collaboration, investment, and project implementation. The status of regional projects and plans shall be showcased. Let us use this conference to pinpoint investment opportunities and best practices, and let's share the latest technological advances and services available for the East African market. We do not have such much time. Economic growth registered in the region today is challenging the speed at which we are responding in terms of providing the necessary energy required. This year, we want to officially document the thought leadership, capture the ideas on paper, and help structure timelines for action. Consequently, Frost and Sullivan, knowledge partners, are writing the report that will be distributed after the event for use, not archiving. So, with these remarks, I wish to invite the Honorable Permanent Secretary from Kenya to give his remarks.
Let me first take liberty in welcoming all of you to our country, Kenya, on behalf of the government of Kenya. I want to tell you to feel free and to enjoy the hospitality and the goodness of our country. We have a beautiful country. We are very proud of it. And after the conference, we indulge you to visit some of our very beautiful country sites. Albert has just given some figures with regard to the rate of our electrification. What is critical about access to energy is it has a very direct relationship with the GDP. If you analyze the GDP levels in different parts of the world, and then you take the corresponding per capita energy consumption, you will note that there is a direct relationship. And therefore, if we want to realize socio-economic development of our country, if we want to transform our region, the East African region, and indeed the Sub-Saharan Africa, we must ensure that people access sustainable, reliable, affordable, and competitive energy services. Those are very critical ingredients of creating an enabling environment for socio-economic development of our countries. If we want to fight poverty, if we want to access healthcare, if we want to ensure that we have food security, all those critical socio-economic factors depend very heavily on access to energy services. And therefore, as a people and as technocrats in this field of energy, we have an obligation of facilitating access of these energy services to our people. That's the only way we can be able to create an enabling environment and fight poverty, fight the disease, and empower our people even through effective education. So I think it is important for us meeting in this forum to interrogate our journey so far in terms of this very important subject of energy, and benchmark and cross-fertilize our ideas so that we can be able to come out with very good ideas which we should go back and implement in our areas of jurisdiction so that we can empower our people, transform their lives, and realize the very needed socio-economic development in sub-Saharan Africa. We started a journey of transforming Kenya and our target was about 5,000 megawatts, not just 5,000, because as you know, when you are dealing with the power system, you must have a balance between supply and demand. So even when you talk about 5,000, it is not just 5,000, it's 5,000 informed by the existing demand, the suppressed demand, and the projected flagship projects that would of course require a lot of power. You can see our mission is to facilitate clean, sustainable, competitive, and secure energy services for our countrymen. And our vision is to avail affordable, competitive, quality energy for all Kenyans. And this 5,000 megawatts project involves not just the generation, but it also involves the transmission and distribution. We have had a project of electrifying all primary schools, which we have done about 95%. And this, the objective of this was to ensure that we can be able to access equitable education to all Kenyans, that all children, wherever they are able to use laptops, they're able to use tablets, they're able to use computer devices, so that the level of education that they access is similar all over. And then we have also been very passionate about a project we call Last Mile Electrification Project. This is about the far-end. While we talk so much about generation, we talk about transmission, we also talk a bit about distribution, we need to be very emphatic on the last journey. How does that power get to the customer? And that is what we dubbed last mile connectivity. We realize that we have a lot of efforts. In our generation, we have made a deliberate decision to use private sector involvement, PPP projects, public-private partnership, and therefore the government need not spend a lot of resources on generation. And we got good frameworks. I will take you through those frameworks. Transmission, that's where we would want to inject resources from the government, and the last mile, so that we can be able to access that electricity, that product, to the far-end customer. And this is where I feel the rubber meets the tarmac, because the characteristic of our region is such that our people are spread out. We don't live in villages, and therefore we need a lot of lines, distribution lines, supply lines, to have everybody connected to power. And that requires huge amount of resources. And we have formulated that last mile connectivity project. We see ourselves changing the current rate of electrification of about 40% to about 70% in the next 3 to 4 years. And I have no doubt maybe by the year 2020, we should almost have what we call universal access to electricity by our citizens. We will have some sections not connected to the main grid, but we will have access of electricity by those Kenyans through off-grid solutions. And we have had a lot of interest, enthusiasm, even from private sector investors who would want to participate in the off-grid electrification. So we are mixing both the resources from the government and the resources from private sector to enhance and to fast-track that electrification to the off-grid people. Then regional power interconnection project is a very critical solution to creating a bigger demand for the region. We already have a line from Ethiopia to Kenya, 500 kilovolts DC line. The works have almost started. The contracts have already been given out. Then we are doing a line from Kenya to Uganda, 400 kilovolts line from Lesos. It's one of our substations in the western part of the country. It will go up to Tororo, and it will continue on up to Rwanda, and it's expected to go on all the way up to Burundi. And that line will also be interconnected with the other one of the DC at Suswa in Naivasha, where we will be able to convert the DC to the AC. Then again, from the same point, we will have a line towards Mombasa, and at a place called Isinya, we will tee off a line from Isinya to Tanzania. So we'll have Kenya-Tanzania interconnection, a project which is already funded. I think we are just about to receive the bids. So in another 2 to 3 years, we should be having interconnection of Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Rwanda, Tanzania. That's a huge demand system. We will expect that with such interconnection, we should take advantage of the huge renewable resources that we have in this region and make use of them. Wind, solar, which you know needs a bigger base. If you need to put in a lot of wind, solar, those intermittent sources, then you need to have quite some sizable base so that you can be able to enhance stability and reliability of the system. And indeed, we also have very aggressive plans on geothermal. Geothermal is our flagship base load. And at the moment, we are very active in the area of Naivasha. It's the area where I was inviting you to try and visit and just see the magic of that geothermal power. We have a potential of about 17,000 megawatts of geothermal, and we've just exploited about 550 megawatts, and we are speedily putting up various models, private sector investments, government investments, a mixture of the two to fast track that generation of geothermal. We've also started generation of coal power plant in Lamu. We do have deposits of coal. What we are drawing from the grid, we are about 85% green. And therefore, when we consider the state of our populace who have not got access to energy services, we have so many of them spread out all over the country with the fires. Biomass fires is what they use to heat their water. It's what they use to heat their houses. Sometimes it's even what they use to light. And where they are not using those biomass fires, they are using kerosene. And you know what kerosene is in terms of emissions. So when you compare the emissions they have now, mixed with the health hazards of those emissions, because they are very close to where they are. When you compare that with having a coal power plant in a distant place where you can even be able to mitigate the emissions, you can use modern technology, super technology, to reduce those emissions. The impact of that plant in terms of giving out reduced or rather cheap or cost-effective energy source to displace those biomass fires, it is really a very commendable effort, and we need the support of everybody, including all those bodies I had mentioned, to try and displace those biomass fires in the region with, even if it is energy, convenient energy from coal, because we will be able to mitigate that emission, would be able to, it's very far from those who will be using it. It doesn't have any health hazard. This is the current generation capacity. I don't need to go through all of it. You can see quite a bit of it is renewable, a lot of it. And that's why I said we need to very seriously think about the need to have quite diverse mix. We used to have quite many challenges of road management before we put in additional sources of generation to the hydro, which was the dominant source. And since we started putting other sources like geothermal, some thermal, we do have some thermal, which are good peaking plants, especially at the peak times. We have seen quite a good change in the reliability and availability of a power system in terms of providing adequate energy to our country. Next. This, I think, is a very good slide. You can see this is what I'm saying. Geothermal is giving us most of the energy. You can see hydro is giving us 37%. And this is where I said our mix is such that most of our energy is indeed renewable energy. So we must, diesel is only about 13%. Most of the rest is, that is, we are talking about 87% of our energy source is really renewable energy. This was just the same journey of the 5,000 megawatts in a matrix form. And this is really the origin. This is the foundation. This is the foundation of the 5,000 megawatts. When we worked out the projected outputs from the various technologies of generation, we did come up with that trend of reducing the cost of power. The idea was to reduce the then current of cost of power from about 20 US cents towards about 10, 12 US cents, a reduction of about 40%. That is the journey we are on. We want to make sure that Kenyans can access cost-effective energy sources. We've already been able to reduce the fuel cost charge from about as high as 7 shillings and 22 cents to the current 3 shillings and 11 cents, which just went up to from 250 due to some challenges of one of the geothermal machines. So we would expect the fuel cost charge will just be between 2 and 3. We will not go beyond between 2 and 3 Kenya shillings per kilowatt hour. And that's a very big change. That change has been about 25 to 30% of the total bill by most of the categories of customers, domestic, industrial, and so on. I think the conclusion is that we do have very good instruments and therefore favorable policy and regulatory frameworks for participation by private investors in our country. The government is very committed to increasing access to maiden energy. The last mile project is being funded by the government, and even in the area of generation, the government participates in securing and giving comfort to the investors so that we will not have, the government will not do anything that compromises that investment. And the beauty about the investments in our country is the fact that we have had a very good track record. The oldest generator is about 17 years, and we have not had any challenges in terms of the off-taker meeting its obligations, in terms of government supporting that investment. I think we have had a very smooth load, and therefore this is a proven destination for investors to come and put in their resources in energy generation. At the moment, we already have about eight operational independent power producers. And the off-taker is Kenya Power and Lighting, which is a government, is 51% is owned by government, but with some private shareholding. So it operates like a commercial entity, and so far, so good. The off-taker has been able to meet his obligation, and we have supported the off-taker from any challenges. Like the off-taker used to do a lot in terms of subsidizing connectivity, but in the recent past, the government has stepped in and insulated the off-taker from that that obligation. So we think with the support of the government as it is, and with the current performance, we have an off-taker who will be able to meet his obligations. And the development partners have also been very supportive to the industry. And therefore, I want to conclude by saying that I know in our midst, we have all representatives, and I think this subject of energy is so critical that all of us, the lenders, the investors, the technocrats, the government, we must work together to succeed in this very important journey that will transform the lives of our countrymen, that will industrialize our countries. And that's one way of making sure that we move from where we are to developed country status. I think energy is a major driver of that journey. It is impossible to talk about industrialization. It is impossible to talk about food security, health, education, even all the social well-being of humankind. Energy is a major player. And therefore, we need to appreciate those who are in this very important area of energy. We need to appreciate that honorable duty we have for our countrymen and make decisions towards quick development so that we can be able to move this journey and get our people out of poverty and industrialize our countries towards socio-economic development. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much.